instead of looking at the union as this monolithic, group of individuals that sit up high on some mountain and you don't have any contact with them, it's really the employees who are in the vehicles.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Connected Conversations. Last episode, we learned about using technology to mitigate risk, and today we'll hear from two industry experts on how to improve outcomes by implementing technology and the importance of securing buy-in from unions and drivers when doing so. We're joined by Ron Robinson, Safety Compliance Manager for the City of Memphis, and Peter Goldwasser, Executive Director of Together for Safer Roads. Welcome to you both. Ron, I'd like to turn things over to you to get started. So we've heard that the City of Memphis has taken a human-focused approach in rolling out change, specifically related to technology within your vehicles. How have you messaged the new technology to your teams?
Sure. One of the things that I've purposely focused on is not describing Samsara as a camera system. That Samsara is a safety system. And that I invite our employees to understand how their safety is improved with this system. As we've been using and introducing the system, our distracted driving was reduced by 75%. Relating to them how it impacts them on a personal level, as opposed to here's a new system, learn the system, have a quick brief or training, and then the system has no impact anymore. Defeats the purpose of having the system.
That's great. Thanks. And Peter, I know that TSR has done quite a bit of research on driver attitudes towards safety technology. When it comes to dash cams and driver safety, what are some recent trends that organizations should be aware of?
Overall, we know the big picture from the research. The big sort of top line is that driver trust in tech increases with personal experience. So the more drivers are using cameras, the more comfortable they are with them. Plus, the more that managers are talking about the technology and are properly contextualizing in-cab cameras in a larger story and reason of why the companies decided to use these from a safety perspective, we see that drivers are more comfortable with the technology, understand its power and potential to save lives and create safer communities. Some specific numbers that we found was that in general, 7 in 10 equipped drivers find all forms of technology acceptable. I think what we see there and what we can take away from that is that as people get comfortable with the technology, as the drivers do, and as they get explained how, as Ron was saying, it's one part of a bigger ecosystem, they become more comfortable with this and they're able to begin to understand the value not only to them, but to the larger road safety system.
That's great. Thank you. And Ron, building on that point, could you share a little bit more about how the City of Memphis built trust with drivers and unions as you were rolling out your safety program?
We just let people get used to seeing the camera in the vehicle. It was just treating it like an airbag, treating it like a seatbelt, treating it like any other safety device. We're going to let you get familiarized with it first. We're going to let you get used to it in a timely manner so that you don't feel overwhelmed and you don't feel a distrust towards the actual safety item.
And I'm sure some challenging conversations have come up as you introduce new features and continue to build out the program. Could you share an example of a situation like that?
Supervisors aren't always familiar with IT systems. They're used to going in the field and supervising directly, hands-on. But now when you start talking about an information system that they're going to have to interact with, especially when you're talking about individuals who might be in their 60s and 70s. For some, that's a major change. And part of the growth has been bringing them along to embrace the system and let the system show them how it magnifies, it leverages their ability to be more effective, but at the same time, not overwhelm them, so that you have sort of a nice middle ground where we bring people along and they become part of the system.
One of the things that we've heard from different TSR members, both large and small, from fleets and public and private, is this idea of multiple constituencies. And so we shouldn't just assume that the managers are going to be comfortable and familiar with the technology and be able to understand A, its value, and B, then how to coach and train on it, separate and apart from the drivers. And so I think it really goes back to there's a number of stakeholders involved in this conversation when it comes down to this types of technology, and they all need to be engaged. They all need to be thought of.
I mean, need to give you a little bit of a shout out there, Ron, in the city as well. You've already made incredible strides with your program. 75% reduction in distracted driving in 2022, and I understand an 86% reduction in severe speeding events in 2023. So what's next?
The next vanguard that we'll be, working towards to get our employees to make that transition, to see it's in their best interest. We want you to go home the same way you came to work, which is a lie. And you shouldn't take that for granted. When I talk to an employee about issues like this, I always try to remind them there's other people that are impacted. I tried to give them the broader picture that there's a whole community that's relying on this person every day to be safe.
One thing that we've heard so much about from sort of anecdotally from different members is that the lessons learned and the positive experiences that drivers have with the technology, it goes so much farther and extends so much farther to the larger community. We've heard that they go back home and talk about the coachable moments and the things that they learned in assertive driving to their spouses, to their children, to their communities, to their churches, and so forth. And so I think the idea of coaching plus recognition plus training all ladder up to and support a larger narrative that's important that we've seen and leads to success.
Ron, pivoting slightly, could you speak to your experience navigating the relationship with your labor associations, and could you share any tips for the rest of the group on how you navigated through that?
Well, I think one of the things that you can do that can make it really difficult is that you can try to presume all the negativity that's going to come with implementing a new safety measure to the point where you don't implement it. You start trying to guess like, well, will the union agree with this? Will the union agree with that? And my mindset, our mindset in public works was, we don't ask the union, can we have headlights on the vehicles? We don't ask them, should the car have a windshield? These are all safety features that through time have been built into vehicles, for the safety of the people who operate them. So looking at Samsara as a safety device, as opposed to a camera, we took that same approach. We just basically said, let's go ahead, implement this first, put it in, and then we will listen to what the union has to say. The way I look at the union is the union's also the members, the employees. So by showing how Samsara benefits them, the union's also seeing that their employees are happy with the product. Instead of looking at the union as this monolithic, group of individuals that sit up high on some mountain and you don't have any contact with them, it's really the employees who are in the vehicles.
Great tips. Thank you. Peter, anything else, any other best practices or stories of how organizations have been able to leverage technology to get buy-in from the unions?
I think Ron's point there really touches on a lot of our work. We think about user-centered design and how do you design from the perspective of the driver, right? Again, all marching towards the same idea of what's our North Star? Why are we doing this? It's to make us safer, it's to make the community safer, it's to balance technology with potential concerns on privacy. They're all valid, and there's always a way forward. And I think that's really, when it comes down to working with unions, when it comes down to working with cities, you've got to be flexible. Otherwise, it's too hard to make progress.
You mentioned something we haven't touched on yet. I'd like to discuss recognition. So, Ron, do you have any pointers or things that your team does to recognize safe driving?
We're beginning to wrap up our program in terms of the incentives, whether it's rewarding safe driving in terms of, special recognition. Maybe the person who's best in a particular unit for that month gets, that premium parking space with the sign saying they were the best driver. Another piece of recognition, I look at as recognition, is, selling the benefits and success of Samsara. And one of them is we do show videos to our employees of incidents. Obviously, being that we do represent the city, one of the issues that we have to deal with is the fact that, we serve the citizens. And, if you have an accident with a citizen, there can be a claim filed. You get a chance to see, oh, an accident happened. We weren't at fault. The individual was exonerated. And, that exoneration comes very quickly. Before the supervisors even arrived on the scene, the employer already knows, hey, I didn't make a mistake. The camera's already shown that I was in the right. What it's really done for us is, one, if there's an accident, obviously we have the video evidence of what actually transpired. But another thing it's really done in terms of the coaching, the management, that interaction when you're trying to work with an employee about their driving habits is it eliminates a lot of negative chatter. It's just, okay, let's have a conversation about what the undisputable evidence this video feed shows us, so then we can go ahead and improve and keep you as safe as possible. It just breeds confidence amongst all the stakeholders in public works that are impacted by SEMSARE.
Peter, any other final thoughts on recognition and building a culture of safety?
One big aspect of that around the recognition front and around the storytelling front is showing different videos and personal stories of drivers who have been involved in different incidents. And it's very impactful. It's twofold. So not only is it very impactful in terms of expressing a message through stories, people remember how you made them feel versus necessarily the exact words, but that's how we communicate as humans, right? We tell stories and we connect that way. But then it also actually has a secondary benefit of being seen as something that is almost, you chose me to tell my story as a driver. And so it's very validating, and it's putting them in a position of leadership where other drivers will look at them for the lessons learned.
Well, thank you both for such an insightful conversation. Just to recap, today we learned first that full transparency is key when achieving driver buy-in. And we heard that communicating change early and often gives the team members time to adapt. For example, the city of Memphis built trust by clearly communicating change, listening to feedback, and iterating their approach based on that feedback. Second, it's helpful to think outside of the box when rolling out new technology. Dash cams are no different than any other safety feature in the vehicle, like seatbelts or airbags, and they're meant to help protect drivers and keep them safe. Third, focus on the big picture. Unions and organizations share a common goal, and that's keeping their team members safe. Center things around the well-being of the driver and communicate programs clearly to labor associations to get buy-in. That's all for today. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in episode 3.